Now we will be discussing about logical functions. So let's try to understand logical functions with respect to what are logical functions, what are the different variations of logical functions, and how do we implement the same. So if I want to talk upon logical functions, now logical functions are something in Excel which are used to test a particular criteria, a particular condition. Either it can be true or it can be false. Now logical functions will perform some task if the condition is true and perform some another task when the condition is false. Now this task would be giving some values in the outcome, it could be giving certain calculations in the outcome, or it could be searching some data based on the logical conditions which are there. So let's try to understand the variations of logical functions. If you can see on the screen, the logical functions are having lots of variations. The very first variation of logical function is AND. Now what is the meaning of AND? AND means all the given conditions or all the given criteria must be satisfied all at once. Now what does that mean? Imagine that you have 10 criteria and you want to apply certain logic only and only when all the 10 criteria are met. So at that time, you have a logical condition known as AND. What does AND do? It gives me a result set as true when all the specified conditions are true, and it will be false when any one of the condition which is given turns itself as false. So it requires all the given set of conditions to be true. That is the purpose of AND. Now there is something called as OR. Now what does OR do? You must be knowing either this or that. Let's say I have again those 10 conditions, but I don't want to apply certain logic only and only when all the conditions are true. If any one of the given condition is true, I can implement the logic. That's the purpose of OR. So what does OR do? It returns true when any of the given condition is true. Minimum to minimum, one condition needs to be true. But what if all the conditions are false? Obviously, the OR result is going to be false. Now, there is some more logical functions which are there, that is NOT. Now, what does NOT do? NOT is known as negation. Now, what does negation means? It will inverse the outcome of the result set, which means if a particular condition is giving me true, NOT will make it as false. If the particular condition is giving me false, NOT will make it as true. So, it will reverse the result of the argument which is there. And then there is if. Now you must be knowing that if this condition is specified, if this condition is true, do this task. For an example, if I say if rain is equals to true, which means it's raining, then you'll not go to school. Or else, if the rain is not happening, that the rain is equals to false, you'll go to school. Now obviously that condition is always not going to be true. So if and else. So there is an if logical statement which will return some value if a specified condition is true. It will return some another value if the specified condition is false. So these are the basic variations of my logical statements. Now we'll try to implement those logical statements with respect to certain real world examples. So if you can see on the next screen, I have certain questions to be solved in terms of the logical statements. So the very first question is provide Excel training to those employees where the department is sales. Now I have a data at my end which is related to employees. If you can see on the screen, this data is having employee ID, employee name, employee gender, employee department, designation, salaries, location, as well as their start dates. Now, as per the first question, what I wanted to do is I wanted to give Excel training to those employees who are belonging from the department is sales. So first of all, sales as a criteria needs to be true. At that time, I will give the condition as Excel training. If it is not true, then the no training required criteria would be met. So how we can do it? First of all, let's check where this condition is true. So here if you can see, I can write equals to. Obviously you all know that when you are performing certain calculations, we'll start with equals to. Now equals to department. If you can see D2, I've selected that cell and this cell needs to be equals to what? Sales. That's the criteria which I want to be followed. So when I do this and when I enter, you can see it's true. Now you can see that yes, the department is sales, but when I drag this value further, you know this cursor, it is used to drag the formula, value or certain outcomes below. So when I drag it further, you can see it's false. Why? Because the department over here is not sales, it's business development. So what I want to do with respect to the question is, I want to give Excel training to those employees where the department is sales. So obviously I'm just getting true and false. So I want to give Excel training when the condition is true. I want to give no training when the condition is false. So what I will do is, I'll utilize an approach of if. Now how I will implement it? Let's say equals to, and then there is something called as if. Now you can see on the screen that when I am writing if, it is showing checks whether a condition is met. Which means, what was my condition? That the department needs to be sales. So it will check if the given condition which I want to specify is met or not, and returns one value if true. What do I want to return when the value is true? That is Excel training. So, and another value as false. So it is no training required. So let's proceed further. So with this if I want to take use of this function, I'll not press enter. It's a wrong approach. Why? Because when you're selecting certain functions from this approaches, you'll obviously do if. When you get it, you can hover over the next functions which are there in order to select the others matching that pattern. And if you want to select this, you'll press a tab key. You can directly write this round brackets because functions are obviously called with round brackets. Now what is a logical test? Now logical test is this cell. This cell should be equals to what? That's sales. Now when I do sales, obviously sales is a text related argument or text related value which I want to compare. So I need to mention it in double quotes. If it would have been value, it would have been a numeric calculation. I could directly implement it, or I could directly explain it, or I could directly use it as such. But here, as sales is a text value, I have to write it in double quotes. Now, if you can see in the if statement, the logical test part is in bold. So that's the parameter which I have mentioned, that this is a logical test. Now, I am writing value if true. Now, what is the meaning of value if true? If you can see, value if true is in square brackets. Square brackets in the sense it's not mandatory as such to be mentioned. It will give us true and false. But I do want to mention that when the value is true, which means when the department is sales, I want to give an Excel training to them. So I'll write the text which I want to incorporate or which I want to show when this condition is true. So Excel training is what I want to give them. So that's the value which I want to show when the given condition is true, comma, value if false. Now what does value if false means? I know that sales would be not the department of all the employees. Obviously, there will be different departments which will be coming. So the specified condition is not going to be true always. So what I want to do when the specified condition is false? So I want to return something else. So that's an else. If you can see, it's value if false when the condition is not true. So I'll give no training over here. And you could see in this if, when the condition, when I check it directly, the sales was having a criteria of true. And here it has given me what? Excel training as an outcome. According to the question, we got it. Where the department is sales, we got that the Excel training needs to be given to that employee. Now, if I drag it further, I can double click on it. So the same function which I have implemented would be copied for all the other cells till the end of the cells, or I can drag it from here as well. So here you can see the department is business development. Obviously, the specified condition which I want to check is not true. So that's why it has given me value if false as an outcome. That is no training. So we have solved the very first question where we wanted to check that if the department is equals to sales, then and only then give the Excel training to those employees. So this was the use case of if. Now let's try to see the next question which is there with us. Provide Excel training to those employees where the designation is executive. And if you can see, there is one more criteria which needs to be specified, that the designation needs to be executive, that is fine. But this salary must be less than 60K. Now 60K is nothing but 60,000. So if you can see in this question, I want to give the outcome of Excel training, but here there is not one condition which was there in the previous question, that the department needs to be sales. Now there are two criteria. Now obviously I have two criteria. So, and there is an approach of and, which means both the condition needs to be true, then and only then I can give Excel training to those employees. So how I can implement the same question over here? So if you can see, I have an approach of what? And. First, let's see, is the department equals to executive and the salaries are less than 60K, that is nothing but 60,000. So what I will do is, if you can see, the designation of the employee needs to be executive. So if I go on the basis of very first condition, that is equals to this value, that is the designation cell, needs to be what? Executive. Now, if you write this, obviously the designation of the employee is assistant, so this condition has tested itself as false. Now, if I double click on the same, you can see over here the condition has met itself as true. But this is not the only criteria which I want to check. The another criteria with this I want to check is nothing but that the salary of the employee must be less than 60K. So if you can see designation of that employee, now I am selecting the entire column. I can select the entire column on the basis of shift space as well, entire row on the basis of shift space as well. So here you can see the designation of the employee is executive, but according to the second criteria, the salary is not less than 60,000. So this employee is not going to get Excel training. Let's see, is there any other executive department? Yes. You can see below there is another executive department, and yes, the salary of the employee is less than 60,000. So how I can solve this question and give that employee Excel training as a part? So what I will do is, first let's check which conditions are going to be true. So this is the first criteria which I want to check. And here let me write star, and then this must be less than what? 60. Now K, I will not write K because 60,000 is like 3 zeros. 60K is nothing but 3 zeros. So I will not write 60K because it will be not matching the particular values which are there, and it's a number. I don't need to specifically give it in quotes. So I'm giving it in 60,000, and here if you see, it's giving me answer as 0. Now what does 0 means? It's false. Now if you can see, for all of them the answer is 0, but for this employee the answer is what? 1. If I do shift and space, you can see this is an executive department and the salary of the employee is less than for 60,000 or 60K. If I can see, there is no other employee. Now you can see there is one more executive, but it's not having salary less than 60,000. So here what does 0 and 1 means, and what is the meaning of the star which I have implemented? So star as a part is nothing but an approach of and. Now what does it do? If you can see executive as a department, if I select this, you'll get the value as false. False in the terms of programming means 0. Now 0 into 0, that is 0 into 0 is obviously going to be 0. Now here if you can see, the same thing has implemented, just a second. The same thing has implemented in the rest of the cells, but here if you can see executive as a department, we got the first condition as true. And with respect to that, The second condition was also true. So in terms of this true means 1. And here also I got a condition as true. So here also I got the condition as true. And here true means 1. So 1 into 1 is going to be 1 for us. So if you can see, it has given me 1. So only at this particular position I am going to give Excel training to this employee, and for the rest of them I will not be giving. Why? Because as per the question, what I want to give only to those employees who are belonging for the designation of executive, and means the another condition also needs to be satisfied. So how do I implement? If I just write and, it is just going to give me true, false and so on. But it is not going to solve the text outcome which is there. So I'll obviously use if statement with that. So first of all, I just showed you with the basic approach, but let me talk upon the and wala approach. So you can use and functions and you can see checks whether all arguments are true and returns true only if all the values are true. So the first logical, if you can see, it is asking the first logical test. Logical test is the criteria. What is the criteria? That this part needs to be what? Executive. So this condition or this element or this cell needs to be satisfying the criteria of executive. That is the first condition. Now with this logical, you can implement multiple conditions which are there. So multiple conditions, if you see, what is the next condition? That this cell needs to give you salary which is less than what? 60,000. When I give this, you can see it's false. First of all, the first condition is false. Second condition, no need to check because both the condition needs to be true. So obviously it is going to be false for me, and you can see for all of them it's false. But only for this criteria it is true because the department is executive and the salary is less than 60,000. But I want to show the Excel training wala approach. How I will show is, I'll write a statement. Now I'll write if. Now you know, if doesn't statement, if will return some value if the given condition is true. What do I want to return when the given condition is true? That is Excel training. And what do I want to return when the given condition is false? That is no training. So here I'm using this and approach, that is this entire thing, as a logical statement. And when I check entire thing, you can see the final answer of that entire thing is false, which means obviously it is going to return no training required. So this entire thing is acting as a logical test, and when you want to implement multiple logical tests, you can implement in this way. Because when you write by default, it takes one condition at a time. But when you want to give multiple conditions, you can use and or not approaches which are there. So when I use this, you can see, what do I want to return when the value is true? So I want to return Excel training. And what do I want to return when the value is false? Is no training required. So let's say I write no training. And you can see for the very first employee, it has said no training required. When I drag this, you could see that yes, there is no training required, but there is one employee which was satisfying the given condition that needs an Excel training as per the condition, as per the criteria set by the organization. So this is the second question which we solved with respect to and. Let me repeat it again. What is the purpose of and? When you give multiple conditions, it is testing that all the condition needs to be true. Then and only then it is going to give certain values in the outcome. If any one of the condition is false, the answer or the outcome is going to be false for us. Or the result statement is regarding the false statements which are there. So this was all about and as a logical statement or as a logical function which was there. Now let's try to see another question which is there with respect to us, which is nothing but the next one. Provide Excel training to those employees where either the department is sales Now, when it comes either means anyone. So, either the department is sales or the designation is executive. Now, it's not asking to check all the conditions needs to be true. It is saying something called as either. The meaning of either means or. Either this or that, which means either this can be true or that can be true. So what does that means? Let's try to see with an example that or as a logical statement is going to give me true either of the condition is true, which means if I am passing both the condition, if any one condition is true, it is giving me answer as true. But when both the conditions are false, the answer is going to be false. So minimum to minimum one condition needs to be true. So if I check over here, what was the criteria? That the department needs to be what? Sales. So I've written this criteria. Obviously, it's true for the first condition, and as you can see, the department of this employee is what? It's sales. So the condition is true. But I am checking an either statement, which means either this condition is true or that. If both the conditions are true, I'm fine with it. So how do I implement with a basic part apart from or? So if I do this and I add a plus symbol. Now plus is an operator which is used for the or logical statements. Now how does it implement? That this designation needs to be what? Executive. So I'm giving this and you can see the answer is 1. Now what does that mean? Ki or will give you 1 when the value is true, which is there, and it's a plus statement. So here if you can see, as per the first condition, the value is going to be what? True. If you can see in my outcome, the value for this is true, which means 1. And for this, it is going to be what? False. Because if you can see the designation, it's not executive. So it's false. 1 is true and false is 0. So 1 plus 0 is nothing going to be 1 for us. And I'm going to test it. Now if I double click it, you can see it's going to give me 0. Now how does this 0 comes? 0 means false. The outcome is false. What does that mean? Means neither of the conditions are satisfied. Not satisfied. So here if you can see, the department is business development and the designation is manager. Now the first condition is not satisfied, the answer is false, which means 0. Now the second condition is also not satisfied, the answer is false, that is 0. So 0 plus 0 is going to be what? 0 for me, which is false. You can see all the criteria which are there where we get 1, 1, 1 and 0. But if you can see, there is 2 as a value which we are getting. Now what does that mean? Which means both the conditions are true. Now how does that states? Here if you can see, when I check this criteria, what it is showing me? True. So here if you can see in the value as well, the department of the employee is sales. And when I check another condition, the value is what? True again. That is, the designation is also what? Executive. Now the department is sales, giving me true. That means the value as 1. The designation as executive, which means that is also true and the value is 1. 1 plus 1 becomes 2. So when the value is greater than 1 or greater than 1, it should return the statement of true. When the value is 0, it should return the statement of false. Now this seems to be a bit complicated. Let's try to solve with respect to the or statement, where it gives me true and false, which will help us to understand things in a more detailed manner. So I'll do Control Shift down and I'll press delete. So everything is deleted. So how do I do? I'll use or. Now you can see, checks whether all the arguments, any of the arguments are true, and returns true or false. Returns false only and only if, when all the arguments, when all the conditions are testing itself as false. So I'm taking this. Now what is the first logical test? Now logical test is the criteria which I want to set. Now if I go on this, in this particular part, what do I want to check? That the department needs to be sales. And what is the second logical test which I want to do? That this designation needs to be what? Executive for us. And when I do this, you can see the answer is going to be true. Now, when I double click for the same, here none of the condition was satisfied and the answer is going to be false for us. And you can see this statements which are there, but I don't want the outcome with respect to true and false. I want the outcome when the value is true, Excel training, when the value is false, no training required. So how do I do it? I will incorporate this part into my if statements. So how does that helps? Here if you can see, if, as you all have seen, it will give some outcomes when a specified condition is met. Now, if you can see, this entire part is acting me as a logical test, which means it is checking either this condition is met or that condition is met. So entire part is acting as a logical test for me with respect to OR. Now, value if true. What does value if true means? What do I want to give when any one of the condition is met? I want to give Excel training. Now, what do I want to give if no conditions are met? Select no training as such. And here you can see, for this particular employee, the department is sales, even though the designation is not executive, because or as a statement asks either one or at least one or minimum to minimum one condition needs to be true. And here amongst the two conditions, this one condition was obviously true for us. And you can see we have passed on that we want Excel training when the department is either sales or the designation is what? Executive. And we are able to solve this question, or we are able to tackle this question over here. So this was all about the OR statement. This is how you implement the OR statements into the part. Now, let's talk upon the next question which comes to us. Now, what is the next question is? Now, if you can see, provide Excel training, which means I want to give Excel training to those employees where the salary is not greater than 35K. Now, what does means not greater than 35K? Which means the salary should not be equals to 35K. Should not be greater than 35K. So obviously I'm talking about less than 35K. So what does that means? As you can see, now we are going to see the next question. Now what is the next question? Provide Excel training to those employees where the salary is not greater than 35K. Now what does it mean? It should not be greater than 35K. Obviously it is going to be less than 35K. So where the salaries of the employees are less than 35K, I would be providing Excel training to them. So how does this question would be solved with respect to not, and how do we implement the same? So when you see, now obviously not all employees are going to have salaries less than 35K. Some of them would be having greater than 35K and so on. I don't want to give to all of them. I just want to give only for the limited people. So first, let me show you a basic approach where this salary, I am checking that it should not be greater than 35K. Now greater than 35K, let me first write the condition. So greater than 35K. So this is true, that yes, this condition is true. Now if I check it another, that for many of them the condition is true, that it's greater than 35K. But can you see that this employee's salary is not greater than 35K, it's less than 35K. So as per the question, provide Excel training to those employees where the salary is not greater than. Now, not greater than means I will obviously implement an approach of less than. Now, you can see less than. So less than 35K, yes, the answer of this particular employee is going to be true. That yes, this employee was not having salary greater than 35k, so he was having salary less than 35k. But if I use this in if else, now how do I use it? I can use this if and this logical test, value if true. Now what is the value if true I want? That is Excel training. And value if false is what I want? No training. So I can give this, and you can see that it's giving me no training for those, but for those where the salary was less than 35k, it is giving me that Excel training is required. But I didn't use an approach of not over here. I just basically solved it with the simplest if-else statements, by the simplest operation with the help of less than symbol. But how do I implement a not approach over here? So let me show you. You can solve it like this as well, or you can implement the not. Now what is the purpose of not? Not reverses the outcome of the argument. Now what does that mean? If the value is shown to me as true, it will reverse it as false. So if I show you again that this salary is greater than 35,000, obviously the answer is going to be true for us. And when I drag it down, you can see for most of them it's true. But I want to see this true as an outcome needs to be false. Now how do I do it? I'll do not as an approach. Now you can see not changes false to true, which means whichever value was false, the outcome would be changed as true, or whichever value outcome was true, it will be changed as false. Now if you see, when I give not approach, obviously not needs one logical statement at a time. So here I have written not what? Not of this. Means what is the function value? That is 82,240 is greater than 35,000. The answer inside is true. But when we implement not, it is going to show me false. So if you can see, it is going to show me what? False over here. So whatever condition I write, if you see, the answer of this condition was true, but when I implement not, it has made the answer for us as false. So not is nothing but negation. It reverses the argument answer, or reverses the answer or the value of the argument. If it is true, makes that false. If it is false, it will make it at true. So here, if you can see, it has shown false, which is there. So as per the question, what was the question? Salary should not be greater than 35,000. So I've written a condition that is greater than 35,000, and I'm writing a condition as not. So not has been implemented, which has made the condition which is salary less than 35,000, which is there. So here I want to give them Excel training. So obviously I want to use this as a logical test in my if statement. So I'll write if. This is a logical test. Value if true. What do I want to do when the value is true? That is Excel training. And what do I want to do when the value is false? That is no training. And I can do this. You can see it's showing me no training because the value was false, and it is showing me Excel training when the value is true. So this is how not as an operator is used. Not as a logical function is used for us in terms of reversing the outcomes. If it is true, it will show me false, or if it is false, it will show me true. Remember, in and or, we were able to put multiple logical parts. But in not, we will put one logical part at a time. So if you want to put another logical part, you have to write not again. You can associate with and or for the rest of the operations which are there. So this was about not as a logical function. That how does a not works in terms of helping us to do certain tasks. Now we saw, as per the functions which we studied on the PPT, that if, how does an if works? It works when it gives some value when the condition is true, or it gives certain value when the condition is false. We saw or, when multiple values are given or multiple conditions are given, any one of them needs to be true to show the final answer as true. And all the given condition needs to be tested as true. Then and only then the answer is going to be true. And not is giving me a reverse of the outcome. That is, when the outcome of the condition is true, it is giving me false. When the outcome of condition is false, it is giving me true. Now, the next part is a nested if else. Now, what does a nested if else means? That if I want to implement if, another if and another if in one of the function, which means I want to implement multiple if statements in one particular function. How do I do? Now, what is the meaning of nested? Now, nested means within. So, nested if, which means if within an if statement. So, how does that work? Let's have a question first and let me explain you how does it implements. So, if you could see over here, so where the department is either means I have to see or, either engineer or business development, tag them or give them as level 1. Or if the department is either sales or support, tag them as level 3. Or the department belongs to level 2, which means either the engineering and development department, either of the departments, the tag is going to be level 1. For sales and support, the tag is going to be level 3. And for the rest of them, the tag is going to be level 2 of the employee status. So, first of all, if I see into my data, you could see first is department as sales or business development, which means these two departments are then anyone. Now, I cannot implement and over here because both the condition needs to be true. At one particular cell, how can a department be sales and business development together? It could not be. So, it could give me obviously the answer as false. So, here if I show equals to and. So, if I show that this is equals to what? Sales, you can see in the formula bar, and question that this cell itself needs to be what? Business development for me. So it is going to give me false. Why it has given me false? Even though the department is sales, but I am using an implementation of and. Obviously, at the same location, I cannot have sales and business development both at once. So, I need to do some another approach. Now, what is the another approach which I want to do? I obviously see an or statement instead of and. Because either at that location, it could be sales or it could be business development. So, I'll do or. So, here you can see it is showing me true. Because at that particular location, it is sales or the business development. So, I have used or over here. But I am not satisfied with only this answer. I have to do lots of other operations which are there. Now, what is the next operation? That when this outcome is true, when I am getting the development or the department as sales or business development, I have to give or tag them as level 1. Now, as we discussed upon the rest of the logical functions such as and, or, not, and if, let's talk upon something called as nested if else. Now, what does nested if means? Now, as we have discussed upon the logical functions such as if, and, or, not, let's talk upon the next approach in terms of logical function, that is nothing but nested ifs. Now, what does that mean? What is the meaning of nested and why do we particularly use them? Now, what if I want to implement multiple if else scenario one after another? At that particular instance, I'll use a nested statements or nested if conditions. Now, what is the meaning of nested? Nested means within. Now, nested if means an if within an if statement. That is what we are going to see. Now, let me help you to understand with an example that what is the meaning of nested and how do we particularly implement the same. So, if you can see on my screen that there is a question. Now, this question is where the department is either engineering or business development, which means it could be either engineering or the business development. Now, these two values I need to test in one particular column only. That is, it should be either engineering or the business development. And then if any one of the condition is met, I want to tag them as a level 1 category of employee. So, I'll tag them as level 1. Or, now if these conditions are not satisfied, or if the department is either sales or support, which means if engineering and business development is not there, is it sales or support? Is it something between sales and support? So if there is something either from sales or support, you have to tag them as level 3 category. So that is what the next part which we want. And if it's nothing between engineering and business or the business development, or nothing amongst the sales or support, I will tag the other rest of the departments as level 2. So this is a question, which means obviously I want to test my condition, test my logic n number of times, which means if I'm testing multiple number of times, I will be utilizing multiple number of ifs. Now how I would be using it, let's try to see. Now, if you can see on my screen that there is a department column. Now, what is the first condition? That the department could either be engineering or business development. If any one of the condition is met, the category would be a level 1 employee, which is there. So first, I want to check that the department is either engineering or business development. If you can see what I'm saying, either engineering or business development. Whenever there is a word known as either, which means I'm talking about something called as or. So how does an or implements, and why not an and would be useful for us over here? Let's try to see. Now if I go over here and I utilize and first, let's see why I'm not speaking and not considering and over here. So if you see, and is asking two logical tests. Now, as we discussed earlier, that and will test all the specific condition needs to be true at once. Now, I'll go on this cell. What is the first criteria that I want to check it, that is it engineering or not? So, engineering as a department, I did it. So, as I'm writing down in quotes, as it's a text, comma, the next logical pass, the next logical 2. That is, what is the next logical? At the same place. Is it business development? This is what I am going to check. Now, obviously, as per the normal logical approach or practical thinking, it's going to give me false. Why false? Because at the same place I'm finding that the department is sales and business development. Obviously, a particular person cannot have two departments satisfied at once. So I'm not going to use this statement. So when you want to check multiple values from one particular column or range of columns, you'll use or. So here if you can see, it's sale, the department is sales. And it's not business development. So something between engineering and business development I want, and obviously this answer is going to be false. But what about the next? It's business development. I asked in and that the department must be engineering and business development. Obviously this answer is also going to be false because the first condition, the department is engineering, is false, but the next condition, the department is business development, is true. But as per the AND logic, both the conditions or multiple set of conditions need to give me answer as true. So this is not valid over here. So I'll use an approach of OR. So what does OR does, or what does OR helps me to understand over here is OR either the department is engineering, that's the first logic, or the department is the same place. It could be business development. Obviously, I'll be using an OR approach over here because at the same place or for a particular employee, I cannot have two departments satisfied at once. There will be one department condition. So either this or that. So either engineering or the business development. If any one of the condition from the departments as a criteria is met, I am going to give the answer as true. So if you see in the first cell, what it is telling us that it's a sales one. So as per the condition, the cell is not equals to engineering, so the answer is false. And D2 is not equals to business development, the answer is going to be false, which means this employee is not belonging to level 1. Now, if I run this, you can see it's showing me false, but when I drag it further, it is showing me true. Now, why it is showing me true? If you can see in this cell, what is the criteria? That I want this department to be either engineering or business development. Now, it is not engineering, so engineering as a condition is false. But business development as a condition is true. So, what could I do? I'm going to get an answer as true because it's or. Any one of the specified condition is true, the final outcome is going to be true. So, if I utilize according to that approach, that if I want to test a specified condition. Now, what's a specified condition? That the department is either engineering or the business development. So, if the specified condition, what is a specified condition? It's like this, is equals to sales. Now, I have written the specified condition is equals to sales. Obviously, I cannot write or like this over here. It will show me a wrong approach. It will show me a wrong answer for the same. So, I am utilizing an approach of or. So, how I will mention multiple conditions? So, I'll write or, and in that, what I'll do is, in this first place, is it equals to engineering for us? If you can see, the answer is going to be false because it's sales. Now, is here, the condition is going to be business development. So that's there, and this entire thing is acting as a logical condition for me. Now, it will test first that is it engineering or it is business development. If any one of the criteria is met, the answer is going to be true. Now, once I get the answer as true, what do I want to do? I want to use or I want to tag this employees as level 1. I want to tag this employees as level 1. So, value if true. If the OR logic is giving me answer as true, I want to tag it as level 1. But what if OR logic is giving me false? Because as I said, with if logical statement, it's not mandatory that every time I'm going to get true. Sometimes or the other, or some instances, we could get false as an outcome because it's a logical test. It can give me true, it can give me false as well, based on the criteria. So now, what do I want when the value is false? Do I want level 2? So if I give this and run this logic, if you can see, sales as a department was there for a particular employee and it is giving me level 2. But this is not what I required. But see, according to the first condition, yes, the department of the employee was business development and it is giving me level 1. Here it's engineering and it's giving me level 1. Here it's engineering and it is giving me level 1. There is research and development. Here it is giving me level 2. So as per the condition, the criteria has been satisfied. But it's not the only condition which I want to test. There is one more condition if I want to check That condition is nothing but, if you see over here, what is the condition? That give level 1 to employees either in the engineering department or the business development department. So that portion is sorted. Now what is the next part? Give them level 3 if the department is either sales or support. So here if you see in our file, sales as a department is getting level 2, but what do I want to give them as level 3? Which means I want to test it again. I want to apply another test statement. I want to apply multiple test statements over here. So how I would be doing it? So in this, if you go in this formula, as I said, it's not always required that when the condition is true, I'll pass on only the statements or only certain outcomes. I can do any calculation, I can implement any functions, or I can do lots of things when the conditions are true or when the conditions are false. So what I'm going to do over here is, instead of writing level 2, now I'm not removing the level 1 criteria over here. Why? Because when the logical test which I have mentioned with respect to OR, if it is true, it is giving me level 1. So it is satisfying the first set of question which I want. The next part is, I want to check if it is not engineering nor your business development, is it satisfying the condition of sales or support? Means, is it between either sales or support? Here if you can see the first employee, yes, he is having the department as sales. So obviously he should get a tag of level 3 category of employee. So how I will do it is, I'll write another if. Now as I said, it's not mandate कि every time when the value is true, you write a value as such or certain outcome. You can also implement something else. So I am trying to incorporate one more if statement into the existing if. So this is called as nested, where there is outer if statement and within that outer there is one more inner if statement which could work. Now if you can see, when the value is true, it will give me level 1. When the value is false, it is checking one more if statement. Now I'll obviously write OR over here. Why? Because I want to test either the department is sales or the department is support. So I'll be writing OR. Now what is the logical statement which I want to do is, this needs to be sales for me, and this particular part needs to be what? This particular part needs to be support. So if you check, that is the second logical statement which I have implemented over here. So this is a part of my next if. And you can see the answer of this OR is what? True. You can see over here the answer of this OR is what? True. Now, what does that mean? That employee is not having engineering or business development, but when I did another check on it, it is having anyone amongst the sales or support. So I have got the answer as true. Now, when this outcome, so this is the end bracket of my OR. When this outcome is true, what do I want? I want the category as level 3. Which means if the employee is not belonging from engineering or business development, I want it to be tested that is the department support or sales. If it is amongst that, it should give me level 3, and this is what I have tried to do over here. After that, value false. If this condition is also not satisfying, what do I want to do? Or others are going to be in level 2. So this is what I'll be doing over here. Now you can see that how does it works or how does it implements. First of all, it will go in D2. D2 as a cell. And if you go in D2, what is the value at D2? It's what? Sales. So according to the criteria which we have given, first it will check, is the D2 cell either amongst engineering or business development? The answer is going to be false. So it will not return level 1. So it will return value if false. Now what is value if false? It will go in another if statement. When it is going in another if statement, it is checking another OR condition. Is D2 among sales or support? If you can see, yes, the answer came over here as true. And what do I want to return at that point? That is level 3. If the answer was not true at that particular instance, it would have written as level 2. So this is what we have sorted. Now closing brackets are very important over here. How to do it? First, if you see this bracket, this closure is for your OR statement. Now this closure is for your if statement. But is this if closed over here? No. So you have to put another round brackets or the parentheses in order to close. And when I execute it, can you see it's showing me level 3 as per the conditions which were there? And when I test it again, you can see it has tried to solve my question. Wherever the department is sales or support, it is going to show me what level 3. Wherever the department is either business development or engineering, it is showing me level 1. But nothing among those two criteria which are there, it is going to show me level 2. So if you can see the department is research and development, it has shown me that the categorized part of the employee is level 2 category in the organization. So this is how a nested if else work. There are certain instances, there are certain problem statements, there are certain approaches where the use of nested if else is required. What is a nested if else? That when I write an outer if statement, there could be a condition that when I want to test the condition again or do certain another logic, if first condition is satisfied or not satisfied. So at that point, I'm using another if statement within an if statement. That is known as nested if else. So this was about how a nested if else work and how does it executes for the same. So this was all about nested if else. Now let's try to proceed further in terms of understanding what is the purpose of ifs. Now if I tell you, there are certain approaches, there have been certain interviews when they have asked question based on multiple conditions which we just now solved with the help of nested if else. Many candidates have tried to solve with ifs. Now if I talk upon if, what is the meaning of if? If is nothing but a singular part or a singular function, which means it takes one condition at a time or one criteria at a time, one criterion result at a time. But when I talk upon ifs means plural. So plural means multiple if statements could come, multiple logical statements would be checked multiple times, value if true, value if false would be checked over here. So that is the purpose of ifs. But ifs as a part is not so much vividly used when you go at certain office laptops or the Excel versions which are there used by certain organizations. They don't preferably use ifs a lot. They try to do with nested if else, but we do have an approach of if statement. Now let's see what is an if statement. Now ifs, as I said, it's a plural, which means multiple if statement could be written. So I have also tried with nested if else. So multiple ifs I also tried with nested if else, but it was within. Now all at once. That is the meaning of ifs. Now let's try to see what type of question we would be solving with ifs. So if you can see on the screen what it has written, that create salary range column where, which means there should be another column known as salary range, where the salary of the employee, if it is greater than 1L, that's 1 lakh, and it should be what? The bracket should be high. When the salary is between 1 lakh and 50K, it should be average. And when it is less than 50K, it should have a low salary bracket for the same. So let's try to solve this question with the help of ifs. Now, how we would be solving the same? Now, if I want to talk upon ifs, first, if you see if checks whether a condition, a means singular. If I go further and like if checks whether one or more condition, which means you can have one conditional statements, you can have multiple conditional statements as well. One or more conditions are met and returns a value corresponding to the first true condition. So how does it works? Let me try out with if. Now what is logical test 1? If you can see, it is mentioning as logical test 1. Now what is the meaning of logical test 1? That is the first logic. What was the first logic? That this salary of the employee, this cell, salary cell, must have value greater than 1 lakh. 1 lakh means it would have 1 0 0 0 0 0. So that's 1 lakh for us. So the salary of the employee must be 1 lakh. At that time, what I am writing? Value if true. What is the value if true which I want to give is high. Now, when the condition is true, it is giving me high. But here, if you can see the next criteria which is mentioned over here, if you can see, first value was logical test 1, value if true. It can close over here as well. And you can see it's not giving me anything as such. Now, it's not giving me anything as such. So, what should I do? I want to test another condition. But I just mentioned over here, that is value if true. There was nothing called as value if false. Instead of value if false, if you can see, it's written in square bracket, which means it's not a mandatory approach which is required. So value if false is not there. But instead of value if false, it is asking me a second logical test. If you can see in nested if else, we did the same thing, that we tested the first condition, value if true, but there was value if false. Instead of value if false, we incorporated another if. So here it is happening by default. So here it is asking another logical test. If not this, check another test. Now this another test would be, this part is between. Now how do I write between? Between what? Between 1 lakh to 50,000. Which means the salary of the employee must be equals to 1 lakh to 50,000. So that condition. Obviously, I don't have any function known as between for us in order to do its random between. But obviously, I don't want a random value. I want to test a between approach over here. So how does a between works? Let me show you how does a between statement is written. So first of all, between is using something called as and. What is the meaning of that? So let me write first of all that I want the salary between 50,000 to 1 lakh. So obviously the salary must be greater than or equals to 50,000. But at the same time, it should be less than or equals to 1 lakh. That's a criteria. Let's say 82,000 is the first salary which is there. So obviously it's not greater than 1 lakh. Is it greater than 50,000? Yes. If I want to test that this salary range is between 50,000 to 1 lakh, so it needs to be greater than or equals to 50,000 and less than or equals to 1 lakh. So that's the criteria which I want. So at the same place, I am testing two criteria and both needs to be satisfied at once. Now how I will do it is, I'll go over here, equals to, and I am utilizing an approach of and. Sorry. So and if you can see, this cell, this salary must be greater than or equals to 50,000. Obviously, I will not write K. I'll write 1000 means 3 zeros. So 82,240.77. Do you think so? Is it greater than 50,000? Yes, obviously yes. But is it at the same time less than 1 lakh? Yes, because 82,000 is obviously less than 1 lakh. So and May, I'm checking this less than equals to what? 1 lakh. So here if see at the same position, it is testing. Is it greater than 50,000? Yes. Less than 1 lakh? Yes, it's there. And this is an AND statement which is being followed. So here if you see, if I see over here, what is the criteria which I am getting? That this condition, this answer, this condition is going to give me true. If you can see over here that 82,000 is greater than or equals to 50,000, and this condition is also what true for us, that obviously this salary at the same time is less than 1 lakh. So and logic, you must be knowing that and may, the both the condition needs to be true so that the final answer is true. So is it between that particular part? Yes. So the answer is true. So here you can see, yes, this salary is greater than 15,000 and less than 1 lakh. So it's between 50,000 to 1 lakh. And you can see there is another salary which is 1,16,000. Obviously, it's not between 50,000 to 1 lakh because the first criteria, is it greater than 50,000? Yes. But is it less than 1 lakh? No. One condition was true, another was false. The final answer is false. That is a true statement for us. That is an AND statement for us. Now, if I go and write this logic over here. So here if you see, what is the next logical statement? I'll not write another if over here. I just mentioned logical statement. What is the next logical statement? That it should be between. Between what? Greater than 50,000 or equals to 50,000 and less than 1 lakh. Which means it should be between 50,000 to 1 lakh. So what I will be doing over here is, I'll go over here, I'll select this cell. It should be greater than equals to 50,000 and this same cell needs to be less than equals to 1 lakh. So that's the next criterion which I have written. So that's the next logical statement which I'll follow. And what is the part when the value if true is medium. So if I write this, you can see this particular employee is falling in a medium salary bracket. So the first two criteria are being set, that when the salary was greater than 1 lakh, it's high, and when it is between that particular two categories, that is 50 lakh to 1,000, it is shown as medium. But if you can see, there is an error, which means there is a salary which is less than 50,000. So there is one more criteria which we need to set.
Recording start.
Recording in progress.
So if you can see, we have given two criteria. One is that the salary greater than 1 lakh, it should be tagged as high. And the another is that the salary between 50,000 to 1 lakh, it has tagged as medium. And we saw how this approach are written. But if you can see, there is an error encountering over here. Now, what is the purpose of this error? Obviously, this error is not required for us. Instead of that, if you can see in our question, what was the question? That the salary greater than 1 lakh will be tagged as high. The salary between 50 to 1 lakh would be tagged as medium, and the salary which would be less than 50,000 which would be tagged as low. So let's proceed further. Now, if you can see, it's not always that value if true is done. I have one more logical test which I can write. What is another logical test which I will probably write? Let's say this should be less than what? It needs to be less than what? 50,000. So if it is less than 50,000, because equals to is done in AND. So less than 50,000, what I'll write? That when this condition is true, I'll mention it as low. So here if you see, When I run this part, you can see where there was an error, the salary has been termed as low for us. So this was an if statement. In ifs, what it is doing, it is testing multiple conditional statement, multiple logical tests in one go, and it is having, when the logical test is true, it is going to give me the result set if value is true. If not, it is asking me for another logical test. Now I can pass one logical test, I can pass multiple logical tests as well over here. So this was all about if statement. So this is how logical statements in terms of Excel work. Now Excel has this approaches to be used at different instances. We all have seen that how sum ifs take into consideration, how count if take into consideration, how average if, sum ifs and so on are helpful. So if statements or and or logical statements are used to test as per the condition, that the condition is true or the condition is false, and it will do certain other outcomes as well. So this was all about logical statements. So I hope this is understandable for you all. That's all from my end in terms of logical statements.
Like this video, subscribe to our channel and comment on the concept you want to learn next.